Hello, and welcome. Imagine waking before dawn, your lungs tight with cold air, the world still hushed in darkness, and the very first choice you must make is whether to surrender to comfort or rise and make your bed. What if this simple act could be the spark that lights a fire of confidence within you? If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to BookSnap, and comment below the title of the book you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. The first wave of morning light creeps across the barracks floor, nudging young recruits from restless sleep. In this blink between night and day, Admiral McRaven's voice echoes, "Make your bed." Not a suggestion, but an order. And so each Marine lifts stiff covers, straightens creases, tucks corners tight as a drum, and lays the pillow just so. It takes seconds, but in that moment, something shifts. Private Diaz finishes his bed with military precision, the lines so taut they almost glisten. He steps back and studies his handiwork, a perfect rectangle of order amid the chaos of new beginnings. In the quiet, he feels a flicker of pride, proof that he can follow instructions, that he can control at least one corner of his world. That small victory whispers, "If I can do this right, maybe I can do the next thing right too." Across the row of bunks, Private Lee hesitates. She's still groggy from the night's unfamiliar noises, air raid sirens, distant shouts. The weight of the uniform pressing at her shoulders feels heavier than the blankets. She looks at her rumpled sheets and wonders if such a trivial task matters when so much is at stake. Yet McRaven's words cut through her doubt. If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. With deliberate care, Lee pulls the blanket smooth, her fingers tracing the fabric as though etching resolve into her skin. When she tightens the final corner, her doubt dissolves into determination. The bed is small, but its creation feels vast, proof that discipline begins in the tiniest moments. In that barracks, beds become more than places to sleep. They are daily signposts, litmus tests of resolve. Each morning, recruits rise to the same challenge. Will they honor the simplest task, or will they let it slide, convincing themselves that small details won't matter in the larger battle? Those who choose action discover an unexpected gift: confidence. Because making one's bed is a guarantee that the day begins with accomplishment rather than regret. Admiral McRaven, reflecting years later, recalls how that morning ritual shaped so many lives. In war zones, in boardrooms, in homes, people who start with order carry that momentum forward. A made bed isn't vanity. It's a declaration. I will not be beaten by chaos. It's a promise that when storms come, there will always be a sanctuary of calm to return to, a small triumph to anchor the spirit. In the hush before breakfast, recruits line up behind their beds. The officer strides down the aisle, inspecting. A single misaligned sheet earns a reprimand. Perfection invites a nod of approval. Those nods don't just validate neatness, they affirm capability. Private Diaz feels it in the tightening of his chest, a swell of belief that if he can keep a bed straight under scrutiny, he can face whatever trials lie ahead. Years after leaving the service, many of those recruits still begin their days the same way. CEOs, teachers, parents, each finds in that first-made bed the seed of purpose. They discover that a life of big ambitions arises from the discipline of small acts. So, pause for a moment and imagine your own bed, the one you climbed into last night, heavy with worry or weighted by dreams. What does your morning choice whisper to your heart? In the simple act of straightening sheets, tucking in the edges, and aligning the pillow, you claim a small victory that ripples outward. You tell yourself, "Today, I will not falter. Today, I will honor my commitments, starting with the smallest one." That is the power of the first small victory. It teaches us that even on the bleakest mornings, even when challenges loom like mountains, we can find agency in tiny triumphs. We learn that changing the world begins not with grand gestures, but with a single bed made with care, our first step toward a day and a life defined by purpose and perseverance. The wind off the harbor bites like a blade, slicing through layers of uniform and resolve. Before dawn, Admiral McRaven orders the men and women into the icy waters beyond the pier. No hesitation, no comfort, only the raw shock of cold that seizes every muscle and tests every instinct. Corporal Hernandez steps from the boat. The sea rises to greet her, an indifferent expanse that seems to swallow light itself. Her first breath in the water feels like needles in her lungs, and panic claws at the edges of her mind. Get out. Get back. But the clang of the training bell echoes across the waves, and she forces herself deeper, arms cutting through the cold, legs kicking to stay afloat. With each stroke, her body screams for warmth. Her teeth chatter, her vision blurs at the edges. Yet in that purgatory of chill and fear, something powerful awakens. Hernandez realizes she cannot control the water. She cannot command the cold. All she can control is her next breath, her next kick, her next decision to remain in the struggle rather than surrender to the shore's false promise of safety. Near her, Private Mitchell emerges gasping, shoulders heaving above the surf. He locks eyes with Hernandez, and in that shared gaze, two soldiers facing mortal discomfort, he sees not weakness, but courage. The sea has stripped them bare of pretense. All that remains is raw human will. Holding tight to that silent bond, each finds the strength to press on, hands gripping the edge of the platform until every soldier is accounted for. When at last they climb onto the deck, limbs trembling, uniforms soaked through, they stand shivering in formation. Admiral McRaven's gaze sweeps the row of glistening faces. "Good," he rasps. "You learned something important. You will be cold. You will be uncomfortable. But you will endure. The cold becomes more than a physical trial. It transforms into a crucible for the spirit." Private Nguyen later reflects that in those seconds of near-drowning panic, she discovered a stillness within, a quiet confidence that says, "I can survive this." Months later, back in civilian life, she recalls the sting of cold on her skin whenever she faces a daunting project or personal crisis. She remembers the choice she made in that water, to embrace pain, to meet fear with action, rather than recoil into safety. Pain, as McRaven teaches, is not an enemy but a messenger. It speaks of boundaries to be tested and limits to be redefined. Each ache in muscle and bone is proof of life's vividness, of a body that feels, that rebels, that demands attention. When we learn to greet discomfort with deliberate breath and steady steps, we forge a resilience that carries us through boardroom pressures, family upheavals, and moments when our very identities feel adrift. Years after leaving the service, Mitchell volunteers at a local cold-water swim club. He still plunges into winter lakes at dawn, joined by others who seek more than exercise. They seek the memory of that first icy baptism. Emerging from the water, they don't feel numb. They feel alive, buoyed by the knowledge that they chose to endure discomfort, that they conquered fear one gasp at a time. So consider the cold edges in your own life, challenges that chill your spirit and freeze your confidence. What happens if you step into that fear rather than shrink away? The moment you decide to stay in the water, to breathe into the pain instead of fleeing it, you ignite a transformation. You teach yourself that discomfort is not a wall but a threshold. Step across it, and you discover reserves of strength you never knew existed. The sea may be indifferent to your struggles, but in its icy silence, it offers a gift. The chance to embrace hardship as a teacher, to feel life's raw edge, and to emerge steadier, braver, and unafraid of the next plunge. The wind off the harbor bites like a blade, slicing through layers of uniform and resolve. Before dawn, Admiral McRaven orders the men and women into the icy waters beyond the pier. No hesitation, no comfort, only the raw shock of cold that seizes every muscle and tests every instinct. Corporal Hernandez steps from the boat. The sea rises to greet her, an indifferent expanse that seems to swallow light itself. Her first breath in the water feels like needles in her lungs, and panic claws at the edges of her mind. Get out. Get back. But the clang of the training bell echoes across the waves, and she forces herself deeper, arms cutting through the cold, legs kicking to stay afloat. With each stroke, her body screams for warmth. Her teeth chatter. Her vision blurs at the edges. Yet in that purgatory of chill and fear, something powerful awakens. Hernandez realizes she cannot control the water. She cannot command the cold. All she can control is her next breath, her next kick, her next decision to remain in the struggle rather than surrender to the shore's false promise of safety. Near her, Private Mitchell emerges, gasping, shoulders heaving above the surf. He locks eyes with Hernandez, and in that shared gaze, two soldiers facing mortal discomfort, he sees not weakness, but courage. The sea has stripped them bare of pretense. All that remains is raw human will. Holding tight to that silent bond, each finds the strength to press on, hands gripping the edge of the platform until every soldier is accounted for. When at last they climb onto the deck, limbs trembling, uniforms soaked through, they stand shivering in formation. Admiral McRaven's gaze sweeps the row of glistening faces. "Good," he rasps. "You learned something important. You will be cold. You will be uncomfortable. But you will endure. That moment marks a turning point." Hernandez tucks fists under her armpits, teeth still clicking from the chill, and realizes her fear has loosened its grip. She feels something like steel settle into her spine, a quiet assurance that if she can survive this sea, she can face the uncertainties back on land. In the months that follow, each recruit recalls that plunge as a rite of passage. Private Nguyen, who once hated mornings, now volunteers to lead early patrols, whispering to herself the mantra she first found under cold waves. "I choose courage." When her civilian life threatens to overwhelm her, a high-pressure job, a family crisis, she hears the click of her teeth and remembers the sea's embrace. She pauses, breathes into the ache, and moves forward, mastering discomfort as she once mastered the waves. Pain, as McRaven teaches, is not an enemy but a messenger. It speaks of boundaries to be tested and limits to be redefined. Each ache in muscle and bone is proof of life's vividness, of a body that feels, that rebels, that demands attention. When we learn to greet discomfort with deliberate breath and steady steps, we forge a resilience that carries us through boardroom pressures, family upheavals, and moments when our very identities feel adrift. Years after leaving the service, Mitchell volunteers at a local cold water swim club. Every winter morning, he plunges into the lake at first light, joined by others who seek more than exercise. They seek the memory of that first icy baptism. Emerging from the water, they don't feel numb. They feel intensely alive, buoyed by the knowledge that they chose to endure discomfort, that they conquered fear one gasp at a time. In a small town nearby, a group of entrepreneurs has adopted ice meetings as corporate ritual. Before brainstorming sessions, they gather at the frozen pond, stripping down to swimsuits and plunging in pairs. They emerge shivering, then suit up, carrying the electricity of challenge into the conference room. Their CEO, once timid in presentations, credits his newfound boldness to those early shocks of cold, proof that stepping into fear is the surest path to confidence. Back on the barracks deck, Hernandez finds herself drawn to calisthenics in the gray early hours, relishing the sting of cold air on sweat-damp skin. She leads her platoon through push-ups in down jackets, each repetition a reminder that discomfort can be embraced rather than feared. The recruits follow her lead, their voices synchronized with falling snow. One more. Breathe. Hold fast. McRaven's lesson resonates in everyday life. When you confront pain, you discover power you never knew you had. It's a paradox. Cold that numbs can awaken you to your inner heat. The sea's indifference to your struggle becomes an invitation to find purpose in hardship. So consider the cold edges in your own life, moments that chill your heart and freeze your hopes. What happens if you step into that fear rather than shrink away? The moment you decide to stay in the water, to breathe into the pain instead of fleeing it, you ignite a transformation. You teach yourself that discomfort is not a wall, but a threshold. Cross it, and you discover reserves of strength you never knew existed. The sea may be indifferent to your struggles, but in its icy silence it offers a gift. The chance to embrace hardship as a teacher, to feel life's raw edge, and to emerge steadier, braver, and unafraid of the next plunge. Dawn's gray light finds the recruits on a muddy field, shoulders aching from yesterday's drills and spirits fraying from relentless trials. McRaven stands before them, eyes sharp as flint, and issues a single command: log, drill. Each Marine grabs a heavy timber slab, double the men for one log, and carries it high above their heads, marching in tight formation until their muscles scream for mercy. Private Alvarez and Private Jackson pair up. Alvarez is lean and lithe, Jackson is broad and solid. Each step they take, the log shudders as their individual rhythms clash, Alvarez's quick cadence against Jackson's measured stride. The log wobbles, threatening to slip. Their arms burn. Sweat and rain blur their vision. They know failure means extra smoke, push-ups for the entire platoon. So they lock eyes, inhale deep, and adjust. Alvarez slows her pace to match Jackson. Jackson quickens his to align with Alvarez. Their steps settle into a unified beat. Solid, deliberate, unstoppable. Around the field, other pairs fight their own battles. Two sandy-haired recruits whose height difference makes balance a cruel joke. A pair who share the same stride, gliding through the mud with surprising grace. A mismatched duo who learn to anticipate each other's fatigue, swapping shoulders beneath the log to give each other relief. Each pair learns that carrying weight alone is grueling, but carrying it together, shoulder to shoulder, makes them more than twice as strong. The log drill presses on, and as muscles threaten to give way, something curious happens. Strain becomes solidarity. When Private Nguyen's hands tremble, Jackson, a stranger, nudges her elbow and offers a breathless grin. When Jackson's grip slips, Nguyen steadies the log with steady fingertips. Their shared burden builds an unspoken bond, a pact written in muscle fibers and mutual breaths. By the 100th yard, their feet have memorized the rhythm. Each step is a promise. I have your back. When McRaven gives the word to stop, the log thumps onto the ground, a collective exhalation of relief, and the recruits stand in silence, mud-caked and hollow-eyed, yet alive with newfound unity. That night, in the damp barracks, Alvarez and Jackson share a blanket and laugh at their clumsy start. They talk of home, of families, of hopes that once felt far away. In the glow of a single bulb, they learn each other's names and stories, and realize that strength forged alone is fragile, while strength shared becomes a rock unbroken by storms. Across the years, this lesson echoes. McRaven recalls his own childhood, pulling weeds alongside his father in the Texas sun. Alone, the work felt endless. Together, the rows of cotton plants seemed to shimmer with possibility. He learned that shared struggle binds us, that hardship becomes a bridge between strangers, and that we carry each other forward when our individual forces wane. Back in civilian life, Marines who endured the log drill form tight-knit teams in every arena. Emergency rooms where surgeons and nurses bear the weight of life itself, tech startups where coders debug through caffeine-fueled nights, classrooms where teachers support one another through battlegrounds of bureaucracy and inequity. They know instinctively that unity is not a bonus but a necessity. In the crucible of shared challenge they find purpose, belonging, and the collective will to persevere. One spring, Jackson joins a volunteer rescue team tackling flood relief. Wading through chest-high waters, he hefts sandbags alongside neighbors, farmers, office workers, retirees, each unfamiliar at first, each exhausted by the deluge. As they pass bags shoulder to shoulder, he recalls the log drill. Matching steps, steady breaths, silent encouragement. They move in unison, building levees that hold back the raging river. When the waters recede, they stand together on the dry earth, drenched and triumphant, knowing that unity saved their town. Alvarez, meanwhile, finds herself in a hospital trauma unit. Nurses and doctors race in synchronized chaos, calling out vitals and vital signs, passing instruments with wordless trust. When a mass casualty drill overwhelms the ER, Alvarez hears McRaven's voice. "We carry each other." She steps in, directing a panicked nurse to calm as she relays instructions. By sharing the burden of crisis, they triage lives with grace under pressure. Unity in shared struggle also demands compassion. During the log drill, McRaven once spotted a recruit falter, his legs betraying him under the log's weight. Instead of calling out or adding punishment, McRaven ordered the log down and motioned the unit to rest. He knelt beside the recruit, pressed a canteen of water into his hands, and said simply, "We're in this together." The platoon exhaled in relief, not because they were spared pain, but because their leader had shared it. That act of compassion stitched them closer than any drill could. In boardrooms and battlefields, classrooms and community projects, this lesson resonates. When hardship unites rather than divides, we discover a power beyond ourselves. We learn to lean, to lift, to synchronize our steps through mud and ice, through fear and uncertainty. We become more than individuals. We become a force of collective will. So reflect on the challenges you face today. Who stands beside you, carrying life's log with you? Where have you matched your stride to another's, learning new rhythms of cooperation? And where might you offer your strength to those who falter? Because unity in shared struggle is not just a tactic. It's the heart's most profound assurance that, together, we can bear any burden and emerge unbroken. The deck was slick with rain, polished by a sudden squall that turned every footprint into a potential trap. Admiral McRaven led his recruits across the ship's wet surface, each step measured, eyes fixed on the horizon. But Murphy's Law whispered through the mist. What could go wrong? Would go wrong. Private Thompson moved carefully, boots gripping the deck, heart pounding as he navigated toward the next checkpoint. Suddenly, his foot skidded on a seam of worn metal, and in a heartbeat, he was sliding, arms flailing, shirt stained dark with seawater. He crashed against the railing, chest heaving, soaked and stunned. Laughter and gasps rippled through the line, but McRaven's voice cut above the din. "Pick yourself up and keep going." Thompson's cheeks burned, not from the cold, but from the sting of failure. He brushed grit from his hands and steadied his breath, sight blurred by salty spray. Around him, others hesitated, wary of the same fate, but McRaven moved beside him, offering a firm clasp on his shoulder. "Mistakes are inevitable," he said, voice calm as the waves below. "What matters is what you do next." With that, Thompson rose, wiped the deck from his knees, and resumed the march. Each step was cautious yet determined, a silent oath that he would not be defined by a single misstep. Behind him, recruits watched, absorbing a lesson far more vital than any drill. Failure tests our character, but perseverance reveals it. In the hush after the storm passed, recruits gathered to share their stories of slips and slides, boots tangled in ropes, hands stinging on grooved steel, chests slick with rain and sweat. No one boasted of perfect footing. Instead, they spoke of grit, of laughs shared over bruises, of the pride in pushing forward when the deck seemed determined to hold them back. Years later, Thompson found himself in a corporate boardroom facing a failed product launch. Charts flattened out, projections evaporated, and stakeholders' patience wore thin. Panic tickled his chest like icy rain. He recalled that night on the deck, the sting of salt water, the weight of glares, McRaven's hand on his shoulder, and he drew a deep breath. Instead of shrinking, he stood tall, acknowledged the misstep, and outlined a plan for a new prototype. The board, inspired by his calm resolve, supported the relaunch. What began as a stumble on a slippery deck became the foundation for a breakthrough product that reshaped the company's future. Failure, McRaven teaches, is not a final verdict but an invitation to learn and adapt. Sliding down a ship's deck is a lesson in physics and humility. Recovering from a failed business plan is a lesson in leadership and resilience. Both teach us to reframe stumbles as data, not disgrace. Back on the barracks, recruits practiced obstacle courses that demanded leaps of faith. Private Chen, remembering his fall at sea, moved with measured boldness. When she vaults over a barrier and loses her grip on the other side, her body twists midair, and she crashes to the ground. Another failure. She lands hard, wind knocked from her lungs, but she smiles, rises, and completes the course. Her laughter, loud and defiant, echoes across the field. She knows failure isn't the end. It's a badge of effort. In civilian life, recruits carry this ethos into every arena. Surgeons recount botched incisions that taught them gentler techniques. Artists reflect on abandoned canvases that led to their signature styles. Athletes recall falls on the track that spurred them to refine their form. Each slip becomes a lesson, each bruise a milestone on the road to mastery. McRaven once invited recruits to write down their greatest failures on small cards, then shared them aloud. As each voice trembled, stories unfolded of missed opportunities, broken promises, broken bones. But no one lingered on regret. Instead, recruits shared how each failure unveiled strengths they never knew they had: patience, creativity, compassion for others who faltered. In workshops today, teams practice fail-forward exercises, rapid prototyping sessions where mistakes are celebrated as steps toward innovation. Engineers build, break, rebuild, breaking again, each cycle revealing new insights. Writers share imperfect drafts, each critique sharpening their craft. In these spaces, failure is the catalyst that turns stagnation into momentum. So recall a time when you slipped. On a deck, in a meeting, in a moment you never saw coming. Did you rise with determination, or did you shrink beneath the weight of regret? The choice defines your path. Sliding down a ship's deck is a microcosm of life's unpredictability. The world can be slick, unyielding, and indifferent. But our response, whether we let failure bury us or let it teach us, is everything. When you embrace failure as a teacher, you discover a reserve of resilience. You learn that missteps are not monuments to shame, but signposts on the journey to greatness. Each slide, each fall, each red-faced recovery builds the muscle of perseverance. And when storms return, whether oceans of doubt or seas of challenge, you meet them with the confidence of someone who knows how to rise again and again. The mid-morning sun climbs the rugged pass, turning sweat into salt rivulets that sting Private Alvarez's eyes. The rocky trail winds upward, thin air rattling her lungs. Behind her, a line of recruits strains under heavy packs, each footstep a negotiation with gravity. This is the wide-awake march, a test not of speed, but of confronting the inner voices that whisper, "You can't. You're weak. Turn back." Alvarez presses on. Every hillock triggers a chorus of self-doubt. Your legs are trembling. Your heart is racing. You'll never make it over that next ridge. But she has learned from frost-chilled waters and shaky log drills that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite its roar. So she buries her chin, lifts one foot after another, and listens instead for the steady rhythm of her breath, proof of life's insistence. Private Ramirez, beside her, stumbles on a loose stone. He freezes, mind racing with fears he thought he'd left at sea. His pack's straps dig into his shoulders, the weight of expectations pressing down. In that suspended moment, the voices swell. You were never cut out for this. You'll fail the unit. You'll let everyone down. His fingers tighten on the pack's straps as if to squeeze those lies out of existence. Then he glances to his left, sees Alvarez's steady gaze, and remembers the plank he carried at her side through the log drill, how they had matched their steps until the log moved like an extension of their joint will. His next step is a choice. to cower, or to confront. He wedges his foot onto solid rock and pushes up, each exhale driving the doubt further back. As he finds his rhythm again, his inner critic's voice falters, drowned by his own heartbeat's drum, the primal echo of survival and resolve. Higher still, the march becomes more than a physical trial. It morphs into a crucible of the spirit. The trail narrows until a single misstep means a steep tumble. Recruits move in silent reverence, each step a prayer that guides their focus inward. The mountain seems to loom, an ancient sentinel testing their will. Alvarez pauses at a vantage point, looking down on the ribbon of trail they've conquered. Fatigue etches every face below, but there's also something fierce in their eyes, a refusal to surrender to inner bullies. She recalls her first swim in the cold sea, when panic had been her only companion, and here too, fear had been the first adversary. But now, as she stands above those twisting paths, she recognizes that the most treacherous terrain isn't mountains or oceans. It's the landscape within, where self-doubt waits to trip us at every turn. At a final spur of rock, McRaven's voice carries across the pass, urging them to the summit. The last push is the hardest. Packs feel heavier. Lungs scream for air stolen by altitude. Ramirez's legs threaten to buckle, but he grips the pack's straps, leans into the slope, and takes one agonizing step at a time, chanting inwardly, "I am here. I am strong." When Alvarez reaches the crest, she turns and sees him emerge, body bent but spirit unbroken. She offers her hand, an unspoken pact of solidarity, and together they crest the ridge. The wind up there feels like a blessing, carrying away the hiss of inner critics. Below, the valley stretches into hazy blue, proof that fear can be transcended, that the only walls we cannot scale are those we build ourselves. On the descent, recruits move with newfound confidence. Where panic once stuttered their steps, now calm purpose guides them. Each rock is another conquered doubt, each breath another refutation of the voice that would see them fall. Years later, Alvarez leads a team through a corporate restructuring, an unfamiliar landscape of layoffs and uncertainty. Deadlines tower like cliffs, and boardroom debates swirl like thin mountain air, threatening to suffocate her resolve. In the hush before a crucial presentation, her inner bullies whisper, "You'll forget your lines. You'll look like a fool." She closes her eyes, tucks her hands into her pockets as if gripping bootstraps, and breathes into her center. She remembers the summit, and the mountain's lesson that fear is conquerable. Her presentation unfolds with clarity and composure. Questions that once would have derailed her become stepping stones, missteps reframed as opportunities to show adaptability. By journey's end, her team stands not only reassured, but inspired, seeing in her a leader who stands firm in the face of uncertainty. Back at the barracks, McRaven sums it up. "The biggest battle you will ever face is the one inside your head. Confront your inner bullies and you'll find no mountain too tall, no path too treacherous." In every climb, whether up a rocky pass or through life's shifting terrains, the true test is not of muscle or technique, but of the choice to step forward when fear demands you step back. Every summit lies at the end of a struggle against those inner voices. So, when the path ahead narrows and doubt stands like a sentinel in your mind, lean into the discomfort. Each step through fear is a testament to your courage, a rebuke to the critics within. And when you reach your own summits, whether in boardrooms, courts, or personal trials, you'll know that the terrain beneath your feet was never as formidable as the conviction in your heart. Under a blistering midday sun, the recruits trudge through knee-high mud, each step a battle against suction that steals their energy. The hillside crackles with tension as shouts rise in effort and frustration. Then McRaven's command cuts through the din. "Partner carry, Hercules." Hercules carry. One Marine hoists a teammate onto his back, like a warrior bearing a fallen comrade across a battlefield. Private Nguyen looks around, scanning for someone to carry. The exhausted form of Private Santos sprawled at the back catches her eye. Santos has fought on every obstacle, but the cumulative toll of cold, mud, and sun has left him unable to continue without help. Nguyen kneels beside Santos, pressing a hand to his shoulder. She hears his labored breath, sees the weariness in his eyes. Without hesitation, she plants her feet shoulder-width apart, bends her knees, and slides her arms beneath his legs and around his waist. Santos's arms wrap around her neck, head resting against her back. For a moment, time stills. Two soldiers bound by duty, one leaning into the strength of the other. Nguyen rises, her muscles quivering under the combined weight. Each step forward forces her to summon reserves of strength she never knew she had. Mud grips her boots, threatening to topple her. Santos's weight shifts with every stumble, and she steadies herself, whispering through clenched teeth, "I've got you." Around her, other pairs engage in the same intimate struggle. Marines carrying Marines, their faces etched with strain and resolve. The field becomes a tapestry of shared burden, where leadership is measured not by rank, but by compassion in action. No one leaves a comrade behind. No one conquers the course alone. As Nguyen staggers upward, Santos grips her shoulders and places a hand on her back. "We make it," he rasps, voice steadier than before. In that simple phrase lies the essence of leadership, lifting others not for glory, but because it is the right thing to do. Halfway up the slope, Nguyen's legs tremble violently. She pauses, breathing deep, eyes closing against the sun's glare. Santos shifts lightly, searching her eyes. She nods, and he settles heavier on her back, sharing the burden. It's no longer one person's fight. It's a dance of trust. She supports his weight, he steadies her balance. When they crest the hill, the world stretches out before them vast and silent. Nguyen lowers Santos carefully, and he stands, pushing mud from his uniform. They lock eyes, gratitude passing between them like a silent oath. McRaven steps forward, surveying the scene. "True leadership," he says, voice soft yet resonant, "is found in the willingness to carry the person beside you." He kneels, touches the mud at Nguyen's boot, then appears to wipe it on his own sleeve, a gesture that transcends rank. We all fall, we all struggle, but we rise together. In the days that follow, the recruits carry this lesson into every drill. When one falters under weight or weariness, another steps forward to bear the burden. The exercise becomes more than a test of strength. It becomes a living testament to compassion's power to amplify resilience. Private Jackson, once fiercely independent, volunteers first when a recruit pulls a muscle. He hoists her onto his shoulders, steadying her steps as they traverse rocky terrain. At night, he helps her stretch, his hands gentle where before they might have been firm. Through this act, he discovers that leadership is not a throne, but a shoulder to lean on. On the home front, these Marines carry their compassion into civilian life. Nguyen becomes a volunteer firefighter in her hometown, carrying neighbors from flooded homes to safety. Jackson mentors at-risk youth, carrying their dreams forward when life's mud tries to hold them down. In each rescue, each mentorship, they echo McRaven's lesson. Leadership is not about being served, but about lifting others, even when it hurts. Compassionate leadership also ripples through boardrooms and classrooms. In a tech startup, the CEO institutes support sprints, where teammates plug in together to solve bugs, carrying each other's code triumphs and crashes with equal zeal. In a high school, a principal places aides in every hallway, ensuring no student walks alone, ready to offer help or a listening ear at a moment's notice. The harrowing march across that muddy hill teaches each recruit that carrying another's weight is not a burden, but a privilege. It forges bonds that endure far beyond training fields, extending into every battlefield of life. When we lead with compassion, bearing each other's hurts, sharing each other's loads, we discover a strength that transcends muscle and fortifies the heart. So, as you navigate your own trials, remember, The true measure of leadership lies in the arms of compassion, in the decision to carry a fellow traveler when their strength falters. In that act we find purpose, connection, and the profound truth that no one succeeds alone. The salt wind has calmed, and the waves drift gentle on the horizon as the recruits gather on the beach at journey's end. Before them lies the old wooden rowboat, the same one they first climbed into on day one, its faded paint and fraying rope seats bearing the weight of every dawn's plunge, every fall, every shared burden. McRaven stands before them, rain-scarred face soft in the evening light. He doesn't need to speak. The moment hums with the echoes of their transformation. Private Alvarez steps forward and lays a hand on the boat's gunwale. She remembers the first time she slid beneath that spray, terrified of capsizing. She recalls hauling a comrade ashore, muscles shaking under the weight, and the way summits tested her will. Now, in this quiet dusk, she sees more than wood and nails. She sees proof of every promise they've kept to themselves and to each other. Around the boat, the recruits place their tools, brushes, sandpaper, new rope, gifts for the vessel that carried them through darkness and trial. They begin carefully sanding splintered edges, their movements deliberate and reverent. Each stroke is a tribute, a word of thanks to the rowboat for teaching them that perseverance matters most not at the finish line, but in the small choices made when no one is watching. Corporal Hernandez picks up a coil of rope and knots a fresh seat strap. Her fingers move with the precision born of 1,000 cold water plunges, each knot a reminder that leadership is woven from the threads of service. As she works, she recalls the first knot she tied under McRaven's stern gaze, how her hands trembled then with fear of failure, and how, today, they move with a calm born of countless trials overcome. Junior Officer Mitchell arrives with a can of marine varnish. He dips a brush and glides it along the hull, watching the wood drink in the clear gloss. It shines bright and new, yet every streak of sunlight reveals the grain, years of use and weather etched into its fibers. He thinks of the day he fell on the deck's slick surface, then rose to lead his platoon through a torrential downpour. The varnish, he muses, preserves more than wood. It honors history and hard-won resilience. As the sun dips below the waves, their work slows. They gather around the boat, hands resting on its sides. McRaven steps forward, his voice low in the hush of twilight. When you make your bed, you set the tone for the day. When you plunge into cold waters, you learn to embrace discomfort. When you haul logs together, you discover unity. When you rise from failure, you cultivate perseverance. When you confront your fears, you unlock your inner courage. When you carry each other, you embody leadership and compassion. And now, when you restore this boat, you pay tribute to every lesson it has borne witness to. He pauses, letting the weight of his words settle. This rowboat may be old wood and iron, but it is also a mirror. Look into its grain and see your own reflection, scarred, weathered, but strengthened by every trial. Measure your life not by the victories you parade, but by the challenges you faced, the burdens you shared, and the hope you carried when the waves threatened to overwhelm you. Silence holds them then, a sacred space filled with gratitude. One by one, they place a single flower, a wild flower from the cliffside, into the boat's interior, each petal a symbol of hope blooming amid hardship. Alex, the youngest recruit, hesitates, then tucks his blossom into the bow. He remembers the first time he nearly quit, and how a mentor's hand on his shoulder had guided him back. The flower is his promise to offer that same hand to others. The finished boat glows silver in the moonlight, sturdy and renewed. They lift it together, carrying it down the beach and into the shallow surf. Their synchronized steps echo the rhythm they learned on the muddy logs, the rocky passes, the freezing waters. With one final heave, they set the boat afloat. It rocks gently, as if settling into the honor they've bestowed. McRaven stands waist-deep, head bowed. He extends his arms and the boat drifts toward him. He reaches inside, closes his fingers around a piece of driftwood, an artifact of their journey, and holds it aloft like a torch. "Carry this with you," he says. "Let it remind you that the measure of a life is not in its ease, but in its endurance." One by one, the recruits approach and touch the driftwood, sealing their bond to the lessons learned. Then they wade ashore, their footprints marking a line between who they were and who they've become. In the hush that follows, they look back at the rowboat. No longer just a vessel, but a living testament to small victories, shared struggles, courageous recoveries, compassionate leadership, and unwavering perseverance. It rides the gentle waves as a beacon, its legacy now intertwined with theirs. And as they step into the next chapter of their lives, into classrooms, boardrooms, homes, and communities, they carry the echo of McRaven's final lesson, that a life well lived is measured not by comfort, but by the courage to make your bed, to dive into the cold, to haul heavy logs, to rise from failure, to face your inner bullies, to carry others, and to restore the vessel that carried you. May this story guide you to build your own legacy of purpose and perseverance. One small act at a time, 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 act